we're going to go with another cornerback, Big Ten football player, so that's already awesome. Greg Newsome, who is a cornerback at Northwestern. And I believe, Nick, you have some details on him.
Yep. So he's a little bigger than Asante Samuel Jr. was. He's 6 feet tall, which Asante Samuel is 5'10", and he's also 192 pounds, which that's 12 more pounds. That's some meat.
He's a little bigger. Yeah.
I mean, the weight to height, it makes sense that he weighs more than Asante Samuel Jr.
Because he's still like, he's not Jalen Ramsey level, just jacked, but yeah.
Not yet. I mean, in that NFL weight room, they get pretty big.
Yeah, exactly.
Those first few years, they grow.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, talking about him a little more, so he can play cover 3 and man pretty well. So like that's a little good when you're comparing him to like the aforementioned Asante Samuel, who's mainly better in man, but Newsome's good in both man and zone, which is huge for versatility reasons.
Yeah, so he allowed 31.6% completion in 2020, and that's against all Big Ten teams because they didn't do versus other conferences this year. And obviously in the Big Ten, you got a very good top of the lineup, but then you don't have such a good bottom teams. But still, 31.6%. That's pretty good. They're only catching catching less than a third of the balls that are thrown his way.
Definitely. And then a couple of things with him too. So he's pretty sticky in coverage, honestly. Like there's times where he should have had a pick, but like it was either batted at the line of scrimmage or something like that. So that was kind of like frustrating to when I was watching him. I'm like, wow, he would have jumped that route if it just didn't get knocked down or whatever. So that's tough. And then another thing too is he has the ability. So Northwestern's defense was actually really good, and they played a lot of different schemes, whether that was split safety.
They were ranked at one point during this season.
No, their defense was really good, and he was actually a part of the team that made Justin Fields had a not his best game. Now, I'm not going to say he had a terrible game because there was definitely COVID issues, but he was a part of the defense that stymied him a little bit and stymied other great quarterbacks that are in the Big Ten. So that's kind of a big plus that maybe other guys don't have when they're not facing the best of competition. Now, it's not the end-all, be-all, but it's better than nothing is what I'm trying to get at.
Another thing that I really enjoyed when I was watching him that stood out to me was he was getting like when other teams ran the ball, he was going and tackling them. He was wrapping them up. And that's a big deal because once again, sometimes the Packers don't know how to tackle. And like even Jair Alexander, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, he'll just kind of lunge at the guy or throw his shoulder that way. He won't wrap him up. And Greg Newsome's not scared to get in there and wrap him up. And obviously that's college running backs. Now he's going to play the best running backs in the world. But I still see him getting in there with that confidence and wrapping up runners. So even when he's not making a play because he's not targeted, he can, or like on a pass play, he's still in there on the run plays. He can make the tackle. Like especially Kevin King, that he does not use his arms to tackle runners.
Yeah, definitely. And then another thing too is like he plays up at the line of scrimmage a pretty good amount. Like, yeah, he'll play off and stuff, but like there's a lot of plays where he's just like right in the receiver's face, which I kind of like. It's a little different than when we had Sharon Williams when he was a little older and he was like 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. And
yeah, no, once he came back to the Packers after, when he left and then came back, he was not playing right on that line ever.
Yeah. So I kind of like that too. And then I like his ball skills. Like when the ball's in the air, like making a play on the ball with the receiver there too, whether that's trying to catch it or just knock it, jar it loose. Like I think he does a pretty good job of doing that. And like fighting when the ball's in the air.
And 6 feet tall, that's a good height for a cornerback because usually a lot of cornerbacks are not like super tall. Like they're never like 6'3", but 6 feet tall is good because that means he can go up there and he can contest most of these wide receivers. He's not going to be going up against the best wide receiver on the other team, and he'll be able to contest them. He's not as aggressive as Asante Samuel Jr., but he's aggressive.
Yeah.
And I can see him going up and making some plays.
And then I did want to talk about like one of the negatives. So we mentioned aggressiveness, and so during the last 7 games he had in his last 14 games, 7 pass interferences. And I guess bottom line is he had a few more penalties than what you would hope. But I'm fine with it because I'd rather my guy be too aggressive and trying to make a play and knock a receiver off his route than letting him walk all over you or not getting your hands.
You don't want anyone soft. No one's soft on our team.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like none of these dudes are going to be soft. I mean, but
we don't want stupid penalties. Like, if you're going to be aggressive, you're going to get penalized occasionally, but don't get emotional penalties. You know what I mean? You don't want to, after the play's dead or just because of an earlier play in the game, something's in your head. And I don't think he lets that stuff get in his head. He goes Northwestern, very smart school. I'm sure he's a smart guy, and he knows when to be aggressive and when not to be aggressive.
Exactly. But overall, he would be an interesting corner. Again, all the guys we've talked about have been end of first round, maybe middle second, maybe. Probably unlikely, but there's a lot of
They're not getting to the third round. They're not getting to the end of the second round.
Exactly.
These are all guys the Packers could take at number 29. These are guys the Packers have met with, so they have at least some interest in these players. And also, just one more thing about Greg Newsome Jr. Just like Asante Samuel Jr., I don't think he's going to start right away. I think he might start by the end of the season, though, because of either health issues or just because he's a better player than Kevin King. We'll have to see. Obviously, Jair is going to be the number one corner the whole year. Hopefully, he plays every game.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's going to wrap up this stream for the Packers weekly discussion. So we talked over a few different prospects that the Packers have met with that we would be interested in getting.
Yep.
Next week, we're going to do a couple of things. So we're going to talk about should the Packers trade up in the draft? So trade from 29 to earlier in the first to maybe get a higher flight or higher rated target, or should they trade down to the second, get a few more picks, and get a guy that they could likely take at 29 and then take him later along with get other assets?
Because, as we said, some of these guys will be available early second round. If this is who we're targeting and there's no one we want at 29, why not just move back a few picks, then maybe get a fourth or fifth rounder with it? Because some people will want 29. They're like, oh, my gosh, that guy's going to go off the board soon.
I want that guy really bad, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the Packers have done that. They did that 2017 with Kevin King. They traded back. And then I believe it was with the Browns, and then they had the first pick of the second round, took Kevin King. But, yep,